Good morning. We have formed a quorum. I now call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda, information paper issues since the last meeting. If members have no particular comment to make, we'll move on to the next item. And that is a list of outstanding items for discussion with two items, an overview of training and development for civil servants, and also 2015 starting salaries survey. If members don't object, we'll take these two on board for the next meeting. And the third item on the agenda is a briefing by the Secretary for Civil Service on the policy initiatives of CSP featuring in the 2015 policy address. Let's invite SCS to join us. I'll allow each member 5 minutes for the questions and answers. And this item is also related to the next one on the agenda, extension of the service of civil servants. Maybe we should have a joint discussion. Good morning, Secretary. This is a policy address briefing, and then we also have an item on extension of the service of civil servants. I believe some members may touch on the second item. That's the fourth one on the agenda in this discussion. So I don't think it's so. I think it's okay. So the 5 minutes for each member. Mr. Sin Chung Kai is the first to speak, and then Mr. Lee Chok Yan. Hands up if you want to speak, members. Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. In this year's policy address and policy agenda, some initiatives are related to measures undertaken by the CSP. We have set out the relevant details in the paper submitted to members. May I highlight some of them here? New initiatives. First, to tie in with the overall population policy, we propose to extend the service of civil servants. We are going to have a more detailed briefing in the next item. Second, implementing more friendly employment practices. The government would like to take the lead and be a model for other employers. We are going to do something more on top of paternity leave and 5-day working weeks and so on. We will also encourage departments and bureaus to provide more part-time work where possible. Ongoing initiatives, there are a number of them. First, giving due consideration to to enable the persons with disabilities or ethnic minorities to have equal access to job opportunities in the government. And we're also going to maintain a system whereby the civil service pay will be comparable to the private sector. We are also going to enhance medical and dental services for civil service eligible persons, and also to encourage a learning culture by providing more training courses and programs. And also we encourage departments and bureaus to implement measures to maintain a rigorous, effective, and efficient disciplinary service against misconduct in the civil service. As people have higher and higher expectation of civil service performance, the CE has given recognition to the performance of the civil service, and also the fact that the civil service performed well to serve the public. Because we need to have teamwork, it's important to maintain the high staff morale. So through existing consultative mechanism, we will also going to continue to consult the major trade unions and the staff associations to enhance understanding and communication between the staff side and the management side. We understand that there is a problem with manpower. Since 2007, we have been increasing the size of the civil service by about 1% to implement new initiatives and to maintain quality service to the public. According to the policy budget 2014-2015, as at the end of the 31st of April, will be 173,961, a growth of 1.5% over the previous year. We don't have a so-called cap on the staff establishment. If operational needs are proved and we cannot resort to other means such as staff redeployment, we will support the creation of new civil service posts. As things stand, we expect that the civil service establishment in the next financial year, 2015-2016, will go up. But of course, details will have to be left until after the publication of the budget. At the same time, we are going to maintain the good nature, the quality performance of the civil service to serve the public. Here's a very brief introduction on my part, Chairman. So every member will be given 5 minutes for the Q&A. First member to speak, Mr. Sin Chung Kai, Mr. Lee Chuk Yan, Mr. Leung Chi Chung, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Mrs. Regina Yip, Mr. Teng Ka Biu, Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Chairman, I want to ask a question about paragraph 8, implementing measures to ensure that persons with disabilities or the ethnic minorities have equal access to job opportunities in the government. Will the government introduce a quota system so that major departments and bureaus would employ a certain percentage of ethnic minorities or PWDs? Would this be a better measure to encourage or to promote their employment opportunities? And also, paragraph 17, medical and dental benefits. How much additional cost would it involve? What kind of investment will the government make in this regard? Secretary, thank you, Mr. Sin, for your question. I'll ask the first and second questions, and I'll ask my colleague to supplement. First, in the job market, the trend is to go away from a quota system because the quota system is not really encouraging integration, and someone would just be employed because of the disabilities. And or because of the ethnic background of the job applicant. Our principle is that when applying for a civil service job in the government, they will not be denied equal treatment because of disabilities or because of ethnic background. We would do away with such obstacles. So for PWDs, if they tell us that they are PWDs, we'll make it fair and easy for them to apply for in the application of the job. We would give them the chance to have an interview. As for ethnic minorities, we understand that the problem lies with the Chinese language competency. We have asked departments if the job requirement in this regard is not very high, they should try to lower the requirement. We will make sure that people whose mother tongue is not Chinese will not be disadvantaged. With regard to the enhancement of medical and dental benefits, we're going to have a new families clinic with 10 consultation rooms. The relevant resources have been secured. As for the amount, I don't have the information with me today. I can supplement after the meeting, we hope that in the first quarter of 2016, the new clinic can be commissioned. Well, I think you have answered in a similar way with regard to the question of quota. Even without quota, you should have some performance indicator, and that is after taking away the obstacles, what kind of progress in terms of the percentage of jobs held by these disadvantaged groups. And as for the enhancement, I just don't understand why you have to do this in Fanning. Are you saying that in other districts the service is already quite good, or there are many civil servants living in Fanning? I don't think there are many government offices in Fanning. Are you saying that the improvement is in relation to providing the clinic which is close to where they live or work? Every year we would brief this panel on the progress in promoting the employment of PWDs and ethnic minorities. We have 4 feminist clinics at the time in Hong Wan Chai, Kowloon, and Kowloon West, and Chai Wan. And that's why we want to add another one in Fanning, in the new territories. Permanent Secretary, we have 4 feminist clinics, as the Secretary has said, for considerable period in the past. The Kowloon clinic was moved to a new location in July 2013. Then we already enhanced the service. As for Hong Kong feminist clinics and the NT feminist clinic, the number of consultation rooms will also increase. So from 2009 up to last year, there's been an increase of 16%. We have looked at the needs, and we believe there's a need to have another one in NT with 10 more rooms. That would increase the number of consultation rooms from 32 to 42, an increase of 31%. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan, I started to talk about this when Denise Yu was the secretary. I think we don't need the secretary for civil service. There's nothing new, and the old issues are not getting any breakthrough. You have been talking about family-friendly policies, but it seems that things are not moving forward. Paternity leave is just 5 days. In our discussion on the employment ordinance, we asked for 7 days. There's been no progress, and you claim yourself to be family-friendly. As for the 5-day week system, not all civil servants are entitled to this, because there have been a few rounds of adjustment, and you have to abide by the principle of no additional resources, no increase in working hours, or no effect on working hours, and no effect on service. If you do not reduce the working hours, especially for Mod 1 staff, Model 1 staff, there's no way they can work 5 days a week. There's a difference of 6 hours between Mod 1 staff and other civil servants. If you do not reduce the working hours, there's no way they can have 5-day working weeks. So why don't you do it? And then you are saying that there will be a survey once every 2 years. things are not going to move forward. Have you got any departments whereby they could not do this, but now they can do this? How many posts have been converted?
So when it comes to 5-day working week, no progress has been made, and we are strongly against NCSC staff, and then you're trying to engage NCSC staff so that they can be involved in non-full-time jobs. But then even for NCSC, most of them are full-time staff. So for the 12,000 NCSC staff, about 10%, I suspect, are non-full-time staff. And yet you're now encouraging them to engage in non-full-time jobs. So there'll be more and more NCSC staff who are non-full-time staff. So unless you say that there are more jobs that can be made part-time, I do not see how this policy can benefit the family-friendly policy at all. All right, for you, of course, you can be family-friendly because you don't have much work to do. But then for the rest of the civil service, I think you're just paying lip service when it comes to being family-friendly. So do you have anything to add on this? I suspect none, because I wonder if you're able to answer the questions that I raised just now. Well, I do not agree that we're just paying lip service to this policy. In fact, we are not just doing some window dressing, taking paternity leave as an example. After the administration has taken the lead, now we have introduced legislation to effect statutory paternity leave. Yes, the administration has played or set a good example for that. And on the 5-day working week, yes, we have to review. We have to keep it on review, because for the time being, if you look at the response by the colleagues, actually they think that 5-day is already adequate. And then for the 5-day working week issue, as you understand, when we introduced this, there were several guiding principles, and of course we would like to be family friendly in the first place, but then we also have to bear in mind the cost implications, because if it has to do with the use of public money, we have to be very careful. And over the years, I think we have made a lot of progress. Some 70% of our colleagues are now working on 5-day working week, and then for the remaining 30%, we are still liaising with the relevant bureaus and departments. And so we are actually pressing ahead with this policy, so it's not true to say that no progress has been made. And in a policy address this year, mention was made about the part-time non-civil service contract staff. Well, some colleagues do not work on a full-time basis because they have to take care of their family, and therefore the departments concerned will have to consider whether or not they'll keep these staff as part-time staff, and then they'll work on non-contract civil service terms. Just one additional point. He said that there's been some progress made in terms of 5-day working week. I do not see any progress at all. During the past year or so, how many more departments have now been able to work on a 5-day week basis? Next, Mr. Leung, I'd like to make 2 points here. Just now, the Secretary said that in terms of the civil service growth, so it's growing at a 1.5% rate. And for the increase in the size of the civil service, I suspect that the Secretary has already taken into account the demand by the public in terms of civil service service. Well, if you gave us this figure, during the initial period of the reunification, there was a time when the civil service was scaled down to rather substantially for years, and probably the size of the civil service is standing at about 170,000, and then at the peak of the civil service, we used to have some 200,000 people, and so you're talking, well, at that time we only had about 5 or 6 million people in our population, and now we have more than 7. So in terms of the size of the population and the size of the civil service, should the two should the size of the civil service be adjusted in accordance with the growth in the population? So I do not see any review conducted by the Secretary in this respect. So can you address that point later? Just now. And also after the Occupy movement, yes, this is something of the past, but then in the course of that movement, many people insulted the police by calling them rogue police, and they even claimed that they had been beaten up by the police, and that might have dampened the morale of the police and even the civil service. Yes, the civil service or civil servants have to be politically neutral, but then some have also put on yellow ribbon when they report for duty. So there were some civil servants who also had their personal stance on the issue, and I've also heard people say that, well, within the police, there were also situations whereby policemen might also have different political stance amongst themselves, and to a certain extent that might also have caused some conflicts amongst the colleagues. So in terms of the solidarity of the civil service, are there measures that you can take in order to enhance that? On the issue of manpower, about 10 years or so ago, we used to have 180,000 civil servants, and now steps were taken to reduce that to 160,000. Of course, we took the prevailing economic climate into account, and now in the past few years, we have already resumed recruitment. And this year there was an increase by some 1.5%, and it's the highest in the past several years. That's because we have taken into account the actual need. And you said that that should be pegged to the size of the population. I don't think that's necessary, because that would be a rather rigid rule. If we say that so long if there is a certain number of people in Hong Kong, then we should have a certain number of civil servants. I don't think that's the case. I think we just need to look at the demand of services by the community, and then we adjust the establishment accordingly. And then this year we have already increased the size of the civil service because there are more new initiatives being introduced. So that will continue to be our policy. And as to the insults leveled against police officers and also the civil servants, I think there are two measures that we can do we can take to help those at the front line. That is, the management of the department will have to provide greater support to those working at the front line, and if they have done the right thing, then they should be commended or they should be supported. And we should also provide more counseling services. I understand that as far as the police department are concerned, they have already done that. The third point, that comes back to one of our core values, that is the civil servants should be politically neutral, and by that we mean that civil servants will have to support the governance by the incumbent term of government. As to their personal political inclination, that's their personal decision, and that must not affect their performance at work. In other words, if a particular individual has a particular political stance, that's his entitlement, but then he must not allow that to influence his work. Mr. Wong Kwok Heng, I have two questions for the Secretary, Chairman. First, on extending the retirement age of civil servants. Well, the administration has already spelled out that policy, and you have also conducted a few months consultation. So my question for the Secretary is that after the consultation, and as you have said in the paper, you will be very flexible in dealing with the four measures. So can you tell us exactly how you can prevent the development of a stable culture, and which might also reduce the chance of civil servants getting promoted, because many civil servants are very concerned about that. And second, will the administration come up with a timetable on reviewing the trading funds? Because trading funds were introduced by the previous 2 terms of government for one reason or another. They launched the trading fund for individual departments, but then upon the launching of the trading funds for the departments, we had a situation whereby the staff morale was dampened, and also people might be doing the same job without getting the same pay. And the Hong Kong Post has been one of the examples. So will you be reviewing the operation of the trading fund and also the shortfalls of this system, and how you can close those trading funds as early as possible? 2 questions altogether. Well, Mr. Wong, you raised 2 points. The first is about the extension of a civil servant's retirement age. I think whether or not promotion prospect might be affected, that would affect the serving civil servants. And another issue is whether they can be rehired on contract terms. So that would not affect the progression ladder for the serving civil servants, because the individuals will be vacating their posts for the successors to take up their posts. But then whether or not that would give rise to a culture of favoritism. Number 1, the departments will have to conduct a review whether or not the suitable candidates have been promoted to the right posts. And second, for those who are interested in extending their service, there would need to be a fair mechanism to vet their applications. And we hope that that would be a similar mechanism to the existing promotion mechanism. As you know, our promotion mechanism has been in place for many years and is a well-established mechanism, and it will not be subject to the individual head of department to decide if an individual should be promoted. So that's the first point. And second, at present, the Civil Service Bureau will continue to oversee this, and if there is any application for extension of service, we will look at it in conjunction with the relevant department. And if it involves a senior post, then that would also have to be endorsed by the PSC, the Public Service Commission, so that that would also help prevent a culture of favoritism. With regard to the operation of the trading funds, I'm afraid we will have to defer it to the relevant policy bureau responsible for that trading fund. As far as the CSB is concerned, we have to ensure that, well, of course, if it's still within the civil service, and we will have to work in accordance with the rules of in accordance with the civil service regulations. And then for contract staff, we will have to ensure that they'll be paid reasonably. Well, if it's about the review of the trading fund, you will have to leave it to the relevant policy bureau. Then will it result in a situation whereby they will not be doing that properly, because you're actually asking the department concerned to review its own operation? So should it be the central authorities doing the review instead of asking the departments concerned to do it? Well, for individual policy bureau, and if there are some problems with the trading fund, they will have to deal with that. So they cannot just assume that those problems are not there. And of course, at present, as Mr. Wong just said, is the Hong Kong Post is operated on a trading fund, and earlier on we have had a very detailed discussion on that, and the Postmaster General was also here during our discussion. So I think we will have to deal with it at the policy level. Next, Mrs. Regina Ip. Is it my turn, Chairman? Yes. Thank you, Chairman. What I'd like to say to the Secretary is that, well, in the policy address, I think civil servants are most concerned about 3 areas. And they think you have not resolved those issues, and they find it more disappointing. First, healthcare or medical and dental care. Yes, one more families clinic will be added with 10 consultation rooms, but then we have more than 100,000 civil servants, and together with their family members, we're talking about 300,000, 400,000, and together we also have to take into account the pensioners. And if it's located in Fanling, so how many civil service family members will be able to make use use of that if they have to go to work. And many civil servants are claiming that they do not enjoy any medical benefit at all when compared to the larger corporations like Cathay Pacific and so on. So have you considered doing away with family clinics so that there will no longer be medical officers of the health department, so that you will just offer them medical insurance and so on? So have you considered that? That would be kind of fairer. And as some colleagues have pointed out, with regard to the extension of service plan, that would not be applicable to the serving civil servants, and they would find it more disappointing. So would you consider allowing all civil servants to extend their service by 5 years so that they can just opt in or opt out?
I know you may be concerned about resources and the pensions implication. And you are also concerned that if the management has no choice, then those you want to keep will go, those you don't want to keep will stay, those with low morale would continue to be in service. But that's also true of for the new recruits. And also for the discipline services, there should be a review. Last time it was in 2008. It was the first review in 20 years, and now it's another 6 years. Discipline services, not just the police, have been facing new challenges. Would there be another grade structure review for the discipline services? Secretary. Let me respond to the questions raised by Mrs. Yip. Let me talk about the last one first, grade structure review. The EXCO's decision is that there should be no rigid timetable for a review. The EXCO doesn't think that we should make it a rigid rule, and a more flexible approach is preferred. If there are 3 factors satisfied, and this applies to all departments, not just the discipline services. First, there is a real substantive change to the nature of work, not just more difficult or more diversified. Second, there's a question on wastage, and also if there's a question of recruitment, a problem with recruitment. We would continue to liaise with the relevant grades, and if they raise the point that there are such factors, we'll consider them carefully. I think this policy is fair, and that a grade structure review will be conducted when there are objective factors instead of following a rigid timetable. I've also mentioned job difficulties encountered. It's not just a question for the discipline services, and also there are other mechanisms to increase manpower, to change the work procedures. The relevant bureaus and departments can consider doing this without a grade structure review. The CSB would do its part to tie in. On the extension of service, we have carefully considered the case. If we are talking about new recruits, in view of the longer life expectancy, we are now extending the retirement age. For existing civil servants, as Mrs. Yip has said, we expect that in the coming 10 years, there will be a large number of retirees. In the past 10 years or so, we have asked the departments to update their plans and come up with succession plans. If we keep too many, will prevent civil servants from retirement, then there will be problem with promotion prospects. Then medical services. Well, I don't think insurance is a better option, because apart from family clinics, we also have medical services for the civil service. Any change to the system will be a major change. Of course, there's the consultation on insurance policy for the community. We would monitor the situation. Well, the FHB has already said that the medical insurance, voluntary medical insurance, is not for the civil service. But we'll look at the implications of that insurance scheme on the civil service. We'll follow up the matter closely. Mr. Tan Ka-Biu, not here. Mr. Kwok Wai-Keung. Secretary. With a significant population increase, we have witnessed the increase in workload. As another member has pointed out, the increase in the civil service establishment is not keeping up with the increase in population. I hope you can treat civil servants nicely, and also you have to bear in mind that you are competing with the outside sector for manpower. So you need to improve the conditions of service for civil service so that you remain competitive, so that you can retain quality civil servants, and also to make civil service sustainable. In the last meeting, we said that for NCSC, as shown in the latest review, 1,276 work for 1 to 3 years and 4,533 for 1 to 2 years. If it's been proved that there is a long-term need, you should make arrangements so that these NCSC staff can be converted into permanent civil servants. And even if you cannot do it very quickly, they should be given priority, since they are experienced and they understand the job better. But so far, you have not agreed to do so. Although the number of NCSC staff has been on the decrease. So the CSP has been working on this. But still, there's an outstanding balance. According to your assessment last time, there were 2,960 posts which can be converted into permanent ones, but you have only managed to convert 2,335, or 600 or so have not been converted. You should arrange for a speedy conversion. Second, TCM service. We are concerned about the choice available to civil servants, and I want to mention in particular traditional Chinese medicine. In the past, TCM was not a regularized sector. Therefore, there was no free TCM service provided to civil servants. Will CSP promote the adoption of TCM by the Department of Health so that it would become part of the public healthcare system, and civil servants will be given this additional choice since TCM is also popular? Secretary. First, on non-civil service contract staff, as we discussed in the last meeting, if we can fulfill certain conditions, the departments would be allowed to engage NCSC staff. If there's a permanent need for the post, then they should convert those into civil service posts. As for conversion of NCSC staff to civil servants. Well, we have to be fair and we have to go for open recruitment. But in the past, many of them were successful in securing the civil service employment. Some 15% of them were found to be successful, and other applicants has only got a success rate of a few percentage points. This is just a natural phenomenon on TCM. The first consideration is whether TCM will become part of the public sector healthcare system. If that's the case, then we would take measures to tie in. If we're talking about TCM, we will not be just looking at TCM for civil servants, but TCM for the community as a whole. Mr. Tian Yu-chung, I want to talk about the extension of the service of civil servants and also the length. For new recruits, they can work up to 65. When they reach 60, can they apply for early retirement? Is that going to be allowed? For new recruits, they are just getting CSPF. If they decide to retire, would you approve their retirement on a discretionary basis? For existing civil servants, then their cases will be decided individually. I want to know when the line will be drawn. Say I'm going to retire this year. I want to stay on. I want to apply for extension. When can they submit their applications? And I'm also concerned about disciplined services. Their retirement age is 55, and many staff would like to extend their service. In some departments, such as Social Welfare Department and Labor Department, they sometimes would employ former disciplined services members for investigation work. Is that common among departments? And you may also wish to consider other flexible arrangements whereby the retired disciplined services members can be of service to the community. Secretary, for the new recruits, they will enjoy the CSPF benefits. Of course, they can decide to retire at 60, but of course, the contribution made by the government is dependent on the length of service. So if they leave early, the contribution made by the government to their CSPF will be less. As for the extension for existing civil service, we are proposing a post-service contract, not just for the same department that they used to work for, but in another department as well. They can continue to draw their pension and work for such a contract job positions.
埋呢個咪嗰度聽唔到。Sorry， 係。
即係譚議員問新嗰啲同。
Mr. Tam asked a question about whether the new recruits whose retirement age is 65, can they go when they reach 60? Well, they have to resign. Under the new system, they have no choice as regards retirement age. Okay, so they can decide to resign, but they are disadvantaged because the longer the service, the contribution by the government is bigger. But they can decide when they would like to resign. You're not going to stop them from resigning, right? There's no way we can stop it. For those who have worked for at least 10 years, that the accrued contribution from the government will be granted. What about consultants and half-time job in the discipline services?
Yes, there are. For example, taking the Customs and Excise Department, they have done it on the infant formula milk or powder ban, and then they've hired part-time staff, and also the police have also hired some retired police officers to work at the back office during the Occupy movement. So our conclusion is that other than the civilian grades, even for discipline services, I understand that in the Fire Services Department, some colleagues have retired, and they have also been rehired as part-time staff. Instead of going to the front line to combat fires, they would also be hired or engaged to carry out inspections and so on. Yes, Mr. Lam Kwok Hong, Chairman, I think well, whether or not you've been kind or good to the civil servants, all we need to do is to take a look at some of the minute details. For example, after the Occupy movement, we said that you should reshuffle the Finance Committee agenda. That's what we did last Friday, so that we can discuss the civil service pay rise issue. All right. Now you're introducing a new term, but then why is it that for NCSC staff and also for the lower ranking civil servants, why is it that they are not entitled to this additional pay rise? Why? So are you telling us that for the medium to lower ranking civil servants, they have been enjoying life very well? That's why there is no need to increase their pay further. And then for the senior civil servants, why do they have to receive an additional pay rise? Simply because they drive, and also because of the lowering in the fuel charge. And what about the mileage? So Mr. Kwok Wai Keung has been making certain remarks for the medium to low ranking civil servants. Most of them have been converted to NCSC, so you're lowering their pay, and you would immediately be able to suppress their pay, and then you try to offer them this additional option. You're telling them that since in the outside market, in the private market, they're not receiving any pay rise at all. That's why they would also not be receiving any pay rise, even if they work as part-time civil servants. So Mr. C.Y. Leung has been generous in his remarks, but then when it comes to actual pay rise, you've been very miserly. So what have they done wrong? Why are you treating them that way? All right, in the Occupy movement, you were saying that people are causing obstruction or disturbing people's daily life. But now, what are you doing to the civil servants? So I think all we need to do is to take a look at what you've been doing to civil servants. So this is something of your own making. You're actually suppressing the private market's pay, and then you use that as an excuse to suppress civil service pay. All right, we have subvented bodies, and we also have many colleagues in the Legislative Council, and most of them would belong to the medium to lower ranking grades. So how would they benefit from this? So how can you say that you've been very kind to them? This is so unfair. And then you say that you are extending the service. Well, if they enjoy that so much, then they would not have applied for so many casual leave days. That's because they are not getting any benefit when they are close to their retirement. You've actually changed the pension system, and you are replacing that with a provident fund scheme. But then I've asked some civil servants why they are not retiring, and they said that because my son has not graduated from university, that's why I have to work for a few more years in order to support him. All right, for international school places, you say that there are not enough places. That's because there is a shortage of land. But then for international schools, I think there are simply too many. That's because our education system is not working, and most civil servants are actually saving money so that their kids can go into international schools. That's because our local education system has been such a failure. So even if so I think most of your kids and also grandchildren have gone into international schools. So in the past, you've been able to afford for your kids to go into direct subsidy schools and also IB enroll into IB curriculum. So what has CY Leung done? Well, during the Occupy movement, when I raised this, when I joked about this, I think even police officers were laughing. So I said that, all right, if you are wearing a white shirt, then you'll be able to receive a pay rise. But then if you're wearing blue, then you will not get any pay rise at all. So why don't you go back and tell CY Leung if he is able to justify why medium to lower ranking civil servants are not able to get any pay rise? So, well, you've set up a fund to help the disadvantaged and the poor. And then for the person in command, I think he has been overfed to the extent that he has been suffering from diarrhea. And yet, for those working at the front line, they are not getting enough to eat. So I think you've already used up your 5 minutes. So why don't you ask him? Would he ask CY Leung to just quit? Mr. Tony Chair, first of all, I have to declare that I am a member of the Standing Commission on Civil Service Pay and Remuneration. I think we need to have the civil servants' support and cooperation before we can provide good service to the community. That's why the administration has to introduce friendly measures to deal with its own civil servants, and that would also help set an example for the private sector. And therefore, with regard to medical and dental service that are being offered to the civil servants, I believe that it's been far from adequate. I hope that the administration will do a bit more, or else, when compared to the non-civil service counterparts, I think there should be some difference in terms of the level of service that civil servants get. And therefore, for families clinics set up specifically for civil servants, I think the service has been far from adequate. That's been a problem for a long time, and I hope that more resources can be deployed to provide these services to the civil servants. And as Mr. Leung Kwok Hong said, with regard to the pay adjustment for civil servants, yes, this year, well, actually, we're talking about last year. It should have been adjusted last year, and it's been dragged on until now. And only last week did we manage to pass the proposal. Yes, many people said that they supported the civil servants, but then other than providing lip service, I think they should also translate that into action so that the adjustment can be effected a lot earlier. I think the matter has been dragged on for quite a long time. And then for the performance of civil servants, you said that you do have schemes to recognize their meritorious service. I think that's good, and I hope that more of these can be done so that more people can be made aware of that. But then I've also heard some civil servants say that as far as promotion is concerned, the waiting time is quite long these days. So for civil servants with meritorious service or performance, so in terms of promotion prospect, what has the administration done to make sure that the right person can get promoted? Thank you. I'll be very brief in response to the point about medical and dental benefits. Well, for dental service, I think we have a dedicated dental service for the civil servants, and therefore when compared to other members of the public, they've already got something better, and we have already added some 4 new dental clinics to them, and we are going to have another new family clinic in NT East, so we will continue to beef up the service. And also for the reimbursement. If the civil servants are not able to get the service from the hospital authority, then they can also go to the private sector for the service and then get reimbursement from us. As to whether or not it's adequate, there are some difficulties because as far as Hong Kong is concerned, in terms of healthcare resources, we do not have unlimited services, and therefore the resources are very tight. And I believe that it's not just a matter of money. If we're able to hire more hands, that would also help. And also in terms of promotion prospect, as we have said just now, on the one hand, of course, we hope that some serving civil servants can continue with their work, and to a larger or smaller extent, that would also affect our promotion prospect. Because if there are more people retiring, then of course they would be able to vacate their posts for the junior officers to get promotions. But then if they retire a bit later, then of course that would also affect the progression ladder. And on average, civil servants have to wait for about 10 plus years before they can get promoted. So we will have to strike a balance between these two. And at the same time, we've also invited individual departments that when they consider candidates for promotion, they should not just look at the seniority of the serving officers. In terms of the renewal of the department, they might need to have younger aspiring civil servants who might be performing even better than their senior counterparts, and therefore they might deserve promotion more than their more senior colleagues. Okay, let's move on to the second round. Mr. Lee Cheuk-Yen has already raised his hand, and then Mr. Lang Kwok-Hong. Okay, so 3 minutes for the second round, including both questions and answers. Mr. Lee Cheuk-Yen, I'm still on the family-friendly practice. I think you're just staging this as a show because in the end, you're not willing to help the grassroots civil servants so that they'll be able to enjoy 5-day week. So I'm referring to the Mod 1 colleagues. And in the first round, you've been able to do it rather expeditiously. But then in the second round, you're actually taking excessively long time to do it. So would you admit that it's not possible for the Mod 1 colleagues to enjoy 5-day week because their weekly working hours will be 51 hours, so it's very difficult. So please do not pull wool over the eyes of the public, saying that you've been very family friendly and yet you have not been doing that. And then in the private sector, the employers would just say that they are actually learning from you and they are following your example. If you're not able to do it, then they would not be doing it either. So if you try to play the role of a good employer, then why are you not doing this for the lower ranking civil servants? Well, progress has been made. For example, this year, we understand that for the CEDD, they've also introduced pilot schemes and also for the SWD, for the probation sections, and also the training institutes for the juvenile offenders would also be doing. Would also be doing this. So that would only affect several hundred people. But then, for the junior civil servants, those under in the Mod 1 grade, they would not be able to do it, or they would not be able to enjoy it. I hope that together with the units that I just referred to, that would also represent a rather substantial number. Well, for the difficult cases, it doesn't mean that it's not feasible. So we will continue to try it out, and that policy will continue. As for Mod 1 colleagues, they have also put up this request, and we are reviewing the situation. And their case is somewhat difficult because we're talking about tens of thousands of civil servants in a Mod 1 scale, and therefore we will have to be very careful, but then we will continue to look into it. Chairman, well, by that nothing will happen because you said that by accumulating the smaller number, so you're actually claiming that you've been able to make some progress even though it only applies to several hundred people. So under the three-nose policy, then nothing can be done about it unless you say that you can do away with the three-nose policy. Is that right? I think the most important thing is if you want to change the working hours, then that would also mean that there would be a change to the terms of service, and there would be cost implications. That's why we will have to be very careful about it. Mr. Lang Kwok Hong? Well, as we all know, all right, if you want to join an army, you don't want to be the commander. And then for the commanders, well, without the soldiers, how can you be a commander? So if the lower ranking officers are not able to make ends meet, then how can you still enjoy your brandy? All right, if you have a limited troop, then how can you do this? All right, there is freedom of speech. If you really treat them so well, then why don't you pass that as soon as possible?
Did the senior officials, the permanent secretary, write to the CE saying that these civil servants are not getting the pay rise? Did you advise Mr. C.Y. Leung that this is not the right way to lead the civil service? Well, civil servants are so nice. If they just work to rule for half a day, well, C.Y. Leung won't survive. Many colleagues here have been saying that you are going to help the lower and middle ranks in the civil service. Well, but this is so unfair. While the junior officers are not getting enough to get by, you are suggesting that we should increase the pay for the senior officials. Well, if you are so concerned about the junior officers, you certainly veto the application and ask the senior officials to come to explain. For example, Mr. John Zhang would write in his blog how wages can be suppressed. As for TCM, well, you have bargaining power. If you allow civil servants to have access to such TCM service, the TCM sector will develop. Well, they would get a bonanza. If TCM will get a boost. Mr. C.Y. Leung has been saying that you should be proactive on an appropriate scale. You can interfere with the market. If you interfere, the sector will get a boost. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung should advise C.Y. Leung. If you are talking about the purchasing power, collective purchasing power of hundreds of thousands of people, it's just like the mobile phone industry. Mr. Leung, you have used up your 3 minutes. Well, C.Y. Leung is just outrageous by claiming to be proactive appropriately. All right, for the second item, it's a related item. If there are no further members who would like to speak on the first item, let's proceed to a discussion of the extension of the service of civil servants. I'll ask the Secretary to introduce the paper first, and then every member will be given 5 minutes for the questions and answers. Secretary, well, some of the issues have already been touched on. We are facing an aging population and a shrinking labor force. In the coming 10 years, we think that the wastage rate of civil servants will be higher. Therefore, we need to do something to address succession issues. From April to August last year, we conducted a consultation exercise. We put forward 4 proposals, and that is to adopt a higher retirement age for civil servants starting from a certain date. Second, to make suitable adjustments to the existing mechanism and further employment of civil servants so the heads of department or heads of grades can more flexibly retain experienced officers to deal with the situation in the coming 10 years where the there will be a higher wastage of civil servants. And also we propose to introduce a new post-retirement service contract scheme for engaging retired civil servants on contract terms to fill positions requiring specific civil service expertise or experience. And fourthly, we propose to streamline the control regime of post-service employment of civil servants to facilitate junior officers to take up outside employment after retirement, if they so wish. We received a total of 371 submissions from different individuals, management of different departments, staff side of the departmental consultative committees, and civil service staff bodies. In general, they do not object to the direction of extending the service of civil servants. However, they differ in how this should be done in regard to extension. Quite a number of individual respondents who are members of the public or people who claim themselves to be civil servants, they think that the extension might affect promotion prospects of serving officers and more employment prospects of younger generations, the performance standards of the civil service, and public finance. Having considered the submissions, we believe we can implement the 4 proposals with some suitable adjustments or to come up with complementary arrangements. First, higher retirement age. We would raise the retirement age for new recruits for civilian posts to 65, for disciplined services to 60, instead of asking for an annual suitability assessment after 57. We would raise it to 60 across the board. And there's no need to implement this in phases, because otherwise there may be chaos during the implementation. We have asked an actuarial expert to look at the implications of raising the retirement age for new recruits. As I've said, under the Civil Service Provident Fund scheme, the longer the service, the higher the contribution rate by the government is up to 25%. So for new recruits with a higher retirement age, their service period will be longer if we maintain the existing contribution rate. The long-term contribution rate as a whole will increase from 18% to 19.6%. So that will increase the financial burden on the government. And having considered the implications, we believe that we can adjust the CSPF contribution rate so that overall the government's contribution rate would be kept at 18%. For new recruits, the rates can be as high as 25%, just like what it is now. But they would have to serve for a longer period before the rate would go up to 25%. And also we have to adjust further employment mechanism. In the coming 10 years, we're not expanding the civil service significantly, and we do not think that will be serious recruitment or succession problems, although more civil servants will be retiring. If we extend their service without regard to performance and efficiency, that there may be problems such as mismatch of manpower, and also the adverse impacts on promotion prospects, and also healthy turnover will be affected. Therefore, we would make some adjustments so that the management would be enjoying more flexibility, and that the mechanism can be adjusted to suit the need of the time in retaining civil servants. We're going to relax the assessment criteria. We will allow a longer period of extension, and also to cover people who are under the CSPF scheme. And we're also going to look at the promotion mechanism in coming up with a selection process for the consideration of extension of service. And the mechanism will be put under the scrutiny of the PSC. We believe that this will be transparent and objective and reasonable. Thirdly, we'd like to set up a post-retirement service contract scheme for the purpose of institutionalize the employment of post-retirement civil servants. They will be taking up contract posts, and so post-retirement civil servants can be employed on a contract basis for posts requiring civil service expertise. These are maybe part-time jobs or just short-term jobs, and they can be taken up by non-civil servants. Generally speaking, these posts are non-directorate posts. We also ask departments to come up with a transparent and objective system to consider all those who are interested in continuing or to stay in the workforce after retirement. We're also going to streamline control regime on post-service outside work after consultation. Some 150 posts where the maximum pay is under MPS 20.20 or equivalent in the civil discipline services will be covered by the blanket approval for post-retirement outside work. For example, the postman and cultural services assistants and PCs in the police force, and that will be subject to the conditions that in the last 2 years of the service, the government, the civil service will not be in a position of conflict of interest with regard to the new employer, and then the civil servants, retired civil servants, would not be allowed to participate in tendering exercises conducted by the government. And we're also going to take this up with the PSC to work out the details and come up with guidelines. And we may need to make necessary revisions to the civil service regulations. We hope that we can start the plan to raise the retirement age in 2015. Other measures to enhance flexibility would also be launched around the same time. Apart from members of this panel, we also have non-panel members who are equally concerned about the issues covered by this item. Time is limited, so I would give every member 4 minutes. Mr. Martin Liu, Mr. Lee Chok Yan, Mr. Tony Chan, Mr. Tan Ka Piu, Ms. Chen Yun Han. So, Mr. Martin Liu, you are the first to speak. Paragraph 19. It is said that there are post-retirement service contract scheme for retired civil service, and the management will be selecting suitable candidates on a objective and transparent basis. What do you mean by management? The secretary or the permanent secretaries? Would there be a panel or committee, and who would form those panels or committees? Are you going to announce the selection criteria to enhance transparency? Because I'm a bit concerned that this will lead to cronyism within the departments and bureaus. How can you prevent this? Secretary. 2 things. For existing civil service, if they remain in the current post after it's due for retirement, we hope that this will be dealt with under a mechanism similar to the one on promotion. Of course, we are going to consult unions further. We have a very well-established mechanism to deal with promotions. Of course, the department itself will be responsible for dealing with promotions in the department. But sometimes there will be people from different divisions and units, and the involvement of not just the head, but also the deputy head or assistant head of department will be involved, and then it will be dealt with by a panel, by a committee, rather than by an individual officer. And of course, individual colleagues will be allowed to apply to indicate their interest to be considered. We'll have to work out details. As for the prevention of cronyism, for posts which are not very high-ranking, we ask for reports from the department. As for senior posts, apart from involving my bureau, maybe we should need to get confirmation by the PSC. We have a very stringent system on regulating matters like this.
Now we are trying to relax it. In the past, basically, only where there is no one eligible for promotion, that then the post can be extended. But then, in the past, the main concern was that there might be succession problem, and then even if someone can fill the post, for example, taking the assistant directorate post as an example, because the relatively junior colleagues do not have the necessary experience. That's why we would also consider allowing the incumbent to extend his service. But then, will there be some open, transparent, and objective mechanism in selecting whether in vetting such applications to decide whether or not NPRSC should be offered to the incumbent colleagues? Well, let me supplement. At present, the current thinking is, as the Secretary just said, at the department's level, there will be a selection committee, and then the selection panel's members would be more experienced, and they would understand what is required of the incumbents of those posts. And they would also understand the performance of the colleagues making the application. And then the Civil Service Bureau would come up with a set of guidelines, so that in the future, the selection criteria and also the selection mechanism to be adopted by the respective departments would be provided by the Bureau. So we are preparing that, and in the near future, we will be consulting the departments for their views, and we will also be consulting the staff side on this. That's why the selection criteria or the procedures would be very transparent. That would be spelled out very clearly in the guidelines. Next, Mr. Lee Chek-yen. Chairman. Well, we say that the extension of civil service retirement age should be done. That's because we can see that there might be a gap in the service. And in fact, if you look at the service life of civil servants, if they retire at 60, actually they can go a lot longer beyond that. So by the time when civil servants reach their 50s, they would often say that they would be more than prepared to work longer and serve longer. But then what you've been doing is neither here nor there, because they will have to put in this application and you will have to select them, and you said that there would be measures to prevent favoritism. In fact, to a certain extent, people would be biased, and you would favor or have bias against certain people. Well, office politics mean that, interpersonal relations or relationship would very often overshadow the actual capability of the individuals. That's why, that being the case, why don't you just make it clear that everybody should be entitled to extend and work until 65. because individuals might have this expectation to retire at 60. All right, you should then give them this option. If they want to work until 65, then you should allow them to do so, because you will then be able to defer your pension payment by 5 years, and at the same time they would also be able to accumulate more when they get the pension payment if they can work a bit longer. So if they have already exceeded the longest serviceable years, then they would not get anything more. Yes, that might affect people's promotion prospect, but then for people who want to get this promotion, actually they can also work for 5 more years in the future. So that will make things a lot more clear. People do not have to be confused as to whether they can apply or whether they will be rejected. Okay, if they can retire until 65, okay, for the new recruits, they will have to work until 65. But now you're trying to shrink the provident fund. All right, we have this table here. In the past, well, if you work for 20, 30, 25, 30 years, then the contribution rate by the administration will be 22%. Now you will have to work for at least 30 years before you can get this rate of contribution from the government. In other words, if they retire at 60 in the future, then they will be worse off. So for people retiring earlier, they would stand to lose, because the amount of provident fund that they will get will be smaller. And as you said, in the past, usually they used to have to work for 25 or 30 years, and then they'll get 22% from the administration. Now they will have to work for a few more years before they can get that rate of contribution from the government. So why can't you be more generous? If they can work a bit longer, then why can't you contribute a bit more? So why can't you just contribute 25% when they work for more than 30 years? I think you've been very miserly in this. Secretary, for the 2 points made by the honourable member, we have been very careful, because we do understand the aspiration of the colleagues. But then you also have to understand the operation of the government. If everybody gets automatic extension, then in the end that would affect the promotion prospect of the others. Yes, if everybody will work for 5 more years, that might be okay, but then that would also affect the upward mobility of some incumbent civil servants. And also on the shrinking of government's contribution under the CSPF, the most important thing is for people staying behind, their work will have to meet the needs of the department. For the new recruits, well, the policy is to maintain the government's contribution rate at 18% on average. And also for the provident funds contribution by the administration, we are already somewhat more generous than our counterparts in the private sector. That's why we'd like to keep it at that rate. Well, I think you're still not willing to allow more civil servants to extend their retirement, because you say that that would affect other people's promotion. Well, for the promotion prospect, that can be reviewed. You can allow for more people to be promoted, but then there is no way that you should treat it that way, so that they would be subject to this selection and so on. Next, Tony Chairman. Well, as the biggest employer, the administration will have to make sure that it can tap into the best human resources in Hong Kong. And of course, we will all support the administration's initiative to extend the retirement age of the civil servants. And I share the view of Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen just now. Why are you not allowing incumbent civil servants to have this option? And the Secretary said that there are various considerations, the overall financial affordability, promotion prospect, and so on. But then for the new recruits, their retirement age will now be extended to 65 for civilian grades. And then for the contribution to the CSPF, when compared to the existing or the serving civil servants, there would be some differences. So for certain job types in the civil service, if they have to recruit new recruits, and now they are no longer enjoying this pension system, and if they're willing to adjust the contribution rate of the administration under the CSPF, why are they not allowed to make this choice? They may not be retiring very soon. There are many civil servants who are already on the CSPF, and they might not have served for many years already, because this is a relatively new system or new scheme. So why can't they have this choice? And if they're willing to adjust it so that the employer's contribution rate can be lowered, so why can't they be allowed to do so? Because in any case, you will have to hire new recruits. All right, for a new recruiter who just joined 2 or 3 years ago, when compared to a new recruit or fresh recruit, all right, they might have joined the civil service just 2 or 3 years earlier, and yet they have been denied the choice. Why the case? Secretary, all right, in the past, for civil service services and also civil service policies, inevitably, we will have to draw a line somewhere. So there is bound to be some difference between those who are new recruits and those who have joined already. And the situation that you just referred to, well, for the new batch of civil servants under the new scheme, all right, they have a long way to go before retirement. And whether or not more of these people will be asked to stay on, well, we don't rule out that possibility. But then what we are looking at is that, in the past 10 years or so, at a peak, about 7,000 civil servants would retire. And of course, if they have to stay on for a bit longer, then that would also affect the number. And looking ahead 10 years down the road, what kind of change will this have? We don't know. But then for civil servants staying beyond 60, we propose that they be kept at the present level. In simple terms, you don't have to lower the contribution rate like that under the new system. As to whether or not they will be prepared to do it, that would depend on the need of the department. So that's the balance that we have struck, because after all, for those who have joined, we have to bear in mind that we have to follow the existing contract, or the terms of service. And secondly, we also have to ensure that their need to work will tie in with that of the department. Mr. Lang Kwok Hong, Chairman, I think this is a joke. The community is advancing all the time. And then for the exercise of public powers and also for welfare, and the concept of service is being broadened time and again, and therefore we have to hire more civil servants so that we can provide more service to the community. And yet you are not doing this. And CY Leung would just make use of certain funds, and he would just introduce pilot schemes. So he never looked at the long-term need. So he just does this on an ad hoc basis. If you're so concerned about talents within the civil servants, then why don't you recruit more people? You should also come up with long-term plans instead of just setting up funds of several $100 million, and then as soon as it hits 5 years, then everything will be folded up. If you're so concerned about the upward mobility in the community, if you're so concerned about the quality of service of the civil service, why don't you pay them more generously? And then next, you're saying that civil servants are getting older and they are not able to afford their mortgage payments and so on. Then what you'd rather do is that many civil servants would rather work longer. Well, I've never heard someone who is willing to work longer if he's able to afford retirement. So you've been talking about silver hair force. When civil servants have to be instructed day in, day out at the office, then by the time when they retire, they will still be able to help out. They can work on part-time basis. They can also become consultants. So they will still be able to contribute. So I do not understand why you're saying that people who are not working on a full-time basis will not be able to make contribution to the community. Well, look at C.H. Tong. He has just set up a fund. And as Li Ka-shing said, well, for people who do not know how to do the job are now giving the instructions. So I think it's a very sad story, because you're actually saying that for a person who has been working very hard and in a dedicated manner for the administration, and now he's concerned about his retirement life. That's why he's begging for another 5 years of work in the civil service. So should you have felt ashamed of yourself? And if you're willing to do it, why do you have to put in so many hurdles? Why don't you just allow everybody to extend his service? So why do you have to exercise discretion for the use of any public power? If there is no basis for this use of discretionary power, it would result in corruption and favoritism. That's the beginning of favoritism. Well, for persons like me who are not well educated, any unnecessary discretionary power will become the source of corruption.
Why is it so important to have the discretionary power? Why can't we ask another department to assess the applications of this department? It's simple public administration. Please allow some time for replies to be given. Well, we not much must teach them a lesson. I mean, Mr. Siwala must be taught a lesson. He keeps repeating such measures. Unnecessary discretion is the source of corruption. We can ask different departments to exercise these questions for another department. The senior officials have been given such a big pay increase, and you are failing to provide proper advice to the one in authority. Mr. Ko Wai Keung, in the community, there's been some discussion on the extension of the service of civil servants, because people nowadays live longer and are healthier, and quality of life has improved, so that people now live longer, and therefore there are people suggesting that the service of civil servants should be extended. But for the CSP, the extension of the service is not just about the physical health or conditions of these colleagues, but rather than that there will be many civil servants retiring in the coming 10 years. So you're not really just concerned about the employment prospects of civil servants, but rather you see this as a solution for the high turnover arising from huge numbers retiring. So you should rectify this attitude. Many colleagues are concerned about the CSPF contribution rates. So on the whole, new recruits would work for a longer period. So you have a shift of 3 years from the second tier. Instead of 3 to 15, it's 3 to 18, and then another 4 years from the third tier to the fourth tier. Well, will all civil servants stay on until retirement for more than 30 odd years? Because there is competition. Why can't you distribute the 5 additional years into the different tiers? Because it's not really beneficial to do this, because of you only get 25% when you reach 35 years of service instead of 30. So perhaps you should not try to shift the 5 years to the second tier 3 to 15, from 3 to 15 to 3 to 18, because those who stay on for a shorter period will be disadvantaged. And also the special rate for the discipline services would remain at 2.5%. Although the retirement age will be extended for discipline services, their additional contribution rate will remain the same. Has there been any consultation with discipline services? We have a number of purposes for this extension. Of course, one is about the succession, because there's the concern that more civil servants will be leaving the service in the coming years. And we agree that we should make the best use of existing manpower resources in the civil service. We have this proposed contract scheme, and also a relaxation of the control on post-service outside work. We also want to make it easier for retired civil servants to work in the private sector. Of course, the system is based on the principle that we want to encourage people to stay on, so the contribution rates are progressive. For discipline services, because of the higher demand on physical fitness, so we would like to make sure that the retirement age is appropriate, and the additional contribution rate is considered appropriate at 2.5%. Mr. Tung Ka-pil, I believe the new measures will certainly save money for the government. Although life expectancy is longer, it seems that people are fitter, physically fitter. For the civil service, the first age limit is 57. But many members of the discipline services think that it would be good enough for them to work until 55. And I'm talking about correctional services, fire services, and the police. But of course, for some other discipline services, such as the immigration and people doing investigation in the customs and excise department, might be more appropriate to have their service extended. So we don't know whether it's really appropriate. Perhaps if you can look at the new recruits 20 years back, they were younger when they joined the civil service, and now people are more qualified, academically more qualified, and even for rank and file officers, many of them are holding degrees or associate degrees. So it's very difficult for them to get 25% contribution, not to mention 25%. It's more difficult now for civil servants to get 25% of contribution rate. So I have a grave concern about the scale. It's very difficult for them to reach the highest rate. You should consult the unions. Of course, you can say that we are going to go ahead with this after consultation, whatever they think. It gives people the impression that the adjustment to the scales, contribution scales, is for the purpose of saving money. As for those offer post-retirement service contract, what is the appropriate arrangement? Would the departments try to save money by engaging more PRSC officers and recruit fewer civil servants for the ordinary post. Would that be the case? We are concerned that this would mean that the recruitment of civil servants will be frozen, and then that there will be more NCSC staff. First, with regard to the retirement age for the discipline services, the first proposal was that it should be 57 in the first instance, and subject to annual assessment, it can reach 60. Having consulted the relevant departments, we now propose that it should be 60. But of course, we don't rule out the possibility that different arrangement will be put in place for different departments. We're concerned that if at a certain age they are unable to discharge their functions, the departments would have to deploy them for specific duties. But the departments have indicated that they can cope with this during the consultation. As for NCSC staff, it's for time-limited duties, and not for the purpose of replacing permanent civil service posts. And I don't think departments would defer recruitment, because if it's for the long-term duties, the departments will be put under pressure to recruit more civil servants. We don't see the mechanism as regards how many or how much is the number of posts to be taken up by the new system. So you are comparing the NCSC with the future new system under the PRSC for the post-retirement service contract scheme. We are requiring that the duties should be those requiring specific civil service expertise or experience. So it's different from the NCSC scheme. Let me supplement a point about money saving. This is not about saving money. Because in the future the new recruits will be serving for 5 more years. So for the expenditure on the part of the government is going to increase. We believe that the financial commitment under the CSPF should be kept at 18%. So we've extended the scales to encourage people to work longer in the civil service. As the Permanent Secretary explained, we cannot stop people from resigning. But the system is that the longer the service, the higher the government contribution rate. I don't think this is not changing the system. According to this government or things you said, it will be 65 instead of 60. There's no discretion to be exercised by the heads of department. So you are going to increase expenditure. Civil servants are concerned about cronyism. At present, you can extend the service of civil servants a little bit, but people are already complaining that if your boss favors you, you can do it. You can have the service extended. So if you allow the departments to enjoy such powers, you should explain. Civil servants are worried if the power is vested in the head of department. And there are many NCSC staff working in government departments. What about them? I hope the Secretary or other officials can explain why the decision-making power is vested in the head of department. As for discipline services, you should allow the members of discipline services to have a choice, because we are also talking about physical fitness. Let me have some answers, please, with regard to NCSC staff and the power being vested in the head of department. Why do we have to give the power to the departments? Because they know best and they know the performance of the individual officers.
I think that's similar to the present promotion mechanism, which has been well established and time-honored. And then for future decisions by the departments, they will have to be submitted to the CSB for review. So it cannot just arbitrarily decide on individuals who can stay or who cannot. So they will have to justify why a particular civil servant can receive an extension, and for senior posts, they will have to go back to the PSC for endorsement. I think the present system will become more regularized and systematic. In fact, for the rehiring of retired civil servants on post-service contracts, it's like the infant formula ban in the Customs and Excise Department. So the individuals will be invited to apply. So even for the contract staff, these are relatively short-term and they are not at the directorate level, and the departments would also be required to introduce a fair mechanism so that everybody will have a chance to join. And then for the discipline services, as I've explained, the biggest voice that we have heard is that other than the fact that some colleagues would like to stay on and work, and then for the rest that we have heard, they would like us to adopt an across-the-board approach so that they can all retire at 60. But then for civil servants, you have this standard, and then you have another standard for the NCSC staff. Or for both, they will be decided by the head of department. And if you're not going to introduce any systemic change, then I'm sure there'll be many disputes. And I'm sure Mr. Poon is aware of that. Within the government, the administration initially wanted to extend or expand the pool of NCSC, and there were many disputes as to which department would be able to do that and other departments would not be able to do it. All right, the threshold is now set at the directorate staff, but then it involves whether or not a person can stay. That would also give rise to favoritism. If you'd worked in a private sector, then you would understand that, because they always have favoritism. And if that is the case for the civil service, then that would give rise to a lot of potential corruption. Well, if you give the powers to the management of a particular department, then that would give rise to a lot of favoritism. So apparently, despite many colleagues asking questions, the secretary is still insisting on this. I think you're giving too many powers to the head of departments. I think many colleagues have asked this, and the secretary said that they would be issuing guidelines to the departments and so on. So would you be able to supplement on that, Chairman? Well, I have dealt with many civil service disputes in the past. Very often, even if there are guidelines, they would have ways to go about it. Well, in the Lands Department, when they dealt with certain cases, in other cases, they were very problematic. So my conclusion is that if you give them too many powers, that would be very unfair to the colleagues. Let's not forget that these are not new recruits. All right, they've joined the department for some time, and after a while, there would be favoritism. So you will have to think hard about this. Anything to add from the administration? Just 2 points. First, as I said in my earlier answer to members' questions, well, Ms. Chen might think that, guidelines are guidelines and people might not follow the guidelines. But then there are 2 points that we'd like to make. In the future, when the mechanism is available, then departments will be allowed to look at their operational needs, and they can invite certain staff with experience to stay on in order to help. And that decision cannot be replaced or taken over by the central authorities on behalf of the several dozen departments. Because for those of us sitting in the central government office, it's hard for us to make a decision on behalf of those departments. Then why don't you just decide that everybody will be entitled to stay on for another 5 years, and so that they would all retire at 65? Well, as the Secretary has already explained, why the administration, after weighing the pros and cons, believes that adopting an across-the-board approach to allow all civil servants to extend until 65 would be a problem. So I don't think I need to repeat that again, because the Secretary has already made that very clear. And if we do not adopt that approach, then obviously a decision will have to be taken. And obviously that decision cannot be taken by the central government offices. But then there are two things when such decisions have to be taken. Number one, they will have to follow the guidelines. And of course, if they do not follow the guidelines, then of course complaints can be leveled against them. And second, there would be a review after the selection committee has taken a decision to ask some civil servants to stay. Then in the Civil Service Bureau, we would then review the decision to see if it's an objective and reasonable one. And then thirdly, as the Secretary just said, for posts which would be within the purview of the Public Service Commission, then the Public Service Commission will review such cases. So in terms of the system, we do have checks and balances in place. Thank you. I'd also like to add one point. I understand the concern of Ms. Chen, but then when it comes to promotion, basically we have a similar system in place, because in promotion it's not possible for the central authorities to deal with all such cases. So the department will have to be at the forefront to process such applications, and of course there are bound to be complaints, because there might be individuals who feel aggrieved by such decisions. So the most important thing is that it would not be decided by one single individual. That's why we have decided to adopt a similar system to that for promotion, and we believe that that's a fair one, because only then will we be able to address the concerns that have been raised. Chairman, I do not accept that. I've already forewarned that inevitably there would be many labor disputes. I would also like to follow up on this. Permanent Secretary, you said that there would be a set of guidelines, and you would be putting that out for consultation with the staff side and the management. So how much time would that take? So when can that take place? Well, we hope that by the middle of this year, we can sort things out. And of course, in the process, it's difficult for me to foresee when it will be ready, because these are complicated issues, and in the process of discussion, there are bound to be different views. But then our target is to come up with the guidelines by the middle of this year, and then at the same time, we can implement the new system. But then for the time being, I'm not able to give you a specific date, okay? I think we have spent a lot of time on this, and because of time constraint, we will have to end our item here. So next item, AOB, anything? All right, if not, then thank you.